I'm not someone who's really watched much of the show Adventure Time, but the new game Adventure Time Explore the Dungeon Because I Don't Know I'm sure had a lot of fans excited because of the concept of a dungeon crawler within the show's universe. While the game may be polished and free of technical flaws, its dated gameplay is holding it back from the game I imagine they hoped it could have been. The basic story in the game is that Princess Bubblegum wants you to head into her dungeon to find out why the prisoners are escaping. Now that I know that, doesn't it make the title not very accurate anymore? Before heading into the 100th floor dungeon, you have to choose one of 4 initial characters. These are Finn, Jake, Marceline, and Cinnamon Bun. Each of these characters has unique stats and abilities, which does help give them somewhat of a unique feel. I found that my favorite characters to play were the ones that had levitated, as it made exploring the dungeons a lot faster and safer since you weren't touching any nasty things in the ground. Each character has a few basic moves. They have your regular attack, which is either melee or ranged depending on your character. This basic attack can be charged up as well to perform a unique, cool looking attack. There's also a block button, although I didn't really like the feel or timing of it. If you press a direction while blocking, you can perform a dodge. One of my favorite characters was Marceline because her block ability actually allows her to absorb projectiles, and this allowed me to ignore the annoying timing of the blocking. The last ability is a super move, which can be used once the imagination bar fills all the way up from killing enemies. These super moves stop everything momentarily to display a quick, flashy looking scene that has effects such as damaging everything on screen, freezing the enemies, or summoning a helpful item. Now that you know the basics, we are sent into the first dungeon. The basic structure of the game is very similar to the original Gauntlet, and perhaps even too similar as that game is extremely dated and has repetitive gameplay. You essentially wander around the dungeon looking for the exit and heading to the next floor. Every 5 floors you will reach a checkpoint, and that allows you to return to that floor at any time. At this point you can also choose if you want to return to the hub. The hub is a location that's filled with a collection of characters, and more are added to it as you progress. Some of these are playable characters that you can switch between, while others have different functions. Some of these characters will offer stat upgrades for the playable characters, and you can purchase these upgrades with your gold. There's also a shop that sells various items. Each time you return from the dungeon, it's up to you to decide what you want to buy, and you do need to spend your gold, because when next time you go into the dungeon, Princess Bubblegum is going to take it all away. The hub does offer some room for character progression, but it's hardly enough to warrant much replay value. Even with slightly more in-depth progression and maybe even more fun loot, I could have enjoyed this game a lot more. The loot in the game is in the form of various sub-weapons and tokens. Sub-weapons you find and equip mid-dungeon, while tokens you find and equip before entering the dungeon. The tokens have various passive effects, but not many of these are very interesting. The sub-weapons on the other hand do have a good, silly variety, but I found that you'd almost always want to go with the melee options, since they had unlimited uses and were stronger than basic attacks. One disappointment for me in this game was the lack and variety of areas. You're stuck in the same environment for 20 floors before it changes. They really should have changed it up at least every 10 floors. And the dungeon layouts are overall kind of the same, and it's boring looking too. The only thing that brings some variety to these dungeons are the enemy types. As you progress through the 100 floors, you'll keep encountering new types at a good pace. While some of these will just be more powerful versions of previous types you encountered, there are also a lot of new ideas as you progress through. You'll encounter enemies that dash, grab, multiply, teleport, and even explode when they die. The bosses in this game were also done quite well. Some may expect rehashed boss ideas throughout the game, but they actually do provide a lot of unique and unexpected challenges. While some of these are traditional boss fights, others involve running from a crazy horde of monsters, while another has you trying to find survivors in a dark, spooky maze with a bunch of gloop creatures. I was playing the Wii U version of the game, so I did get to experience one extra feature, and that feature is having BMO on your gamepad. I do have to admit it did make me smile the one time I paused the game and it acknowledged that I was going to the bathroom. I did not get the chance to try out the multiplayer with anyone, but I can assume that it would make the game a lot more enjoyable. I am glad it at least has some multiplayer option, as dungeon crawlers are designed with friends and family in mind usually. Unfortunately, they did not include an online option, which would have been nice in my situation. The dungeons themselves aren't anything special to look at. I did like the beautifully animated pixel characters though. Each of them had a lot of unique animations for different attacks and moves. In particular, I liked the unique chest opening animations. I'd have to see it in person, but I feel like if they did the pixel art style for the dungeons as well, it would have looked a lot nicer. One minor issue that bothered me also was that the characters did not have unique animations when walking in diagonal directions. This was the best part of the game easily. Some of the tracks are forgettable, but I did enjoy many of the dungeon and boss tunes a lot. These thankfully change up throughout the 20 floor areas you're stuck in too, so you never seem to get sick of a certain song. Fans of Adventure Time will appreciate hearing all the original voice actors from the show as well. Overall, I feel like this game really is strictly for Adventure Time fans. While I did enjoy moments throughout the game, too often I just really wanted to move on to a new area already. If I was a fan of the show, there would be a lot more for me to appreciate here. Despite me not enjoying many elements, I think the developer did a great job in what I'm assuming was their goal to create an updated version of the original Gauntlet. It is essentially beefed up, prettier, Adventure Time themed version of that. Whether you enjoy that classic yet arguably dated gameplay is up to you though. The $40 price tag isn't helping it at all either. It honestly felt like it should have been an Xbox Live Arcade or PSN game, and would have been very successful as that probably. The game itself is actually well made, there's not many technical flaws with it. The issue lies completely in its very dated gameplay. Unless you are a huge fan of Adventure Time or really like that classic Gauntlet style gameplay, I have a very hard time recommending this at a $40 price tag. Everyone else, I'd say put your adventuring time on hold until a sale shows up.